Special Thursday morning here at 8 a.m. Pacific, and we've got the one and only Miles Franklin for most of you. For Andy Schectman from Miles Franklin. Little excited to be talking to Andy again, because if you don't know who Andy is and you're in the space, that's very confusing because you're everywhere. You do tons of interviews. You've got a wealth of knowledge, specifically in precious metals, but generally metals entirely. But it's the narrative that you've seen and been talking about for ages. I mean, once again, you can go back and look at videos from years ago, just last week, whatever. All these things are culminating to incredible precious metals prices, unfortunately, incredible debt levels. But also, we're having this discussion here ceremoniously on the end of the day of the BRICS show in Russia. We got lots to talk about, Andy. Tell me how are things looking? What's your mood right now? And we're going to get into all of it. We're going to get into BRICS. We'll get into debt. We'll get into whatever you want to talk about. But we're thrilled to have you here. And I'm going to keep an eye for those live. I'm not very good at it, but I'm definitely going to keep an eye on questions. So if things pop in, I'll try to jump in. And if I don't respond with my feet, I'll ask Andy the questions that you guys have.
Right on, man. Well, thanks for the kind introduction. I appreciate it. These are crazy times in every single metric. You got the BRICS meeting, and that's worth chatting about. The growing union of countries. 45 or so countries have expressed interest. Roughly 30 of them have formally applied on top of the union that we already see. So this is a union that is growing in every possible manner. Percentage of GDP, human population, percentage of production of the world's commodities, from rare earths to precious metals to base metals. The majority of all of the refining of, in fact, 100% of all the refining of the rare earth metals. So a green agenda hasn't been thought out so well, kind of going out of the frying pan into the fire, now reliant upon the Eurasian continent, who produces roughly 85% of the rare earths, and China, who refines 100%, to military might. Three of the four largest nuclear arsenals on the planet. Trade routes, both on sea and on land and on sea. It's a growing chorus of countries that is gaining dominance and legitimacy in every step of the way. We could talk about what's going on at home. A country that is creating $100,000 worth of debt every second. As crazy as that sounds, every second. 1, 2, 3, keep on going, 4, and then that's $1 trillion roughly every 90 days. It took over 200 years to do that the first time. When you talk about the level of fiscal irresponsibility, Andrew, you're talking 31,688 years ago was a trillion seconds. And then putting it all together with the weaponization of the dollar, with the questioning of the ideals or the culture of this country, the lawlessness in the cities, the judicial system, the electoral system, the immigration. This isn't lost on the rest of the world. And so these things are all factoring in to, I think, these countries' desire to find safety in numbers. And we're seeing that happen in the BRICS summit. What I take away from what's going on there today is it's almost like a marketing campaign right now, right? So they want to show the world, in my mind, two things. And again, they're kind of tight-lipped on stuff. We'll know more as Putin, I believe, today or tomorrow will kind of address a summation of all of the things that had been covered. But in looking what I see outwardly, what I see are two things that kind of stick out. One, they want to show everyone that they have their you-know-what together, and that they're finding cooperation and peace through unity, through the striving towards a common goal. What I mean by that is you look at, for example, two things that have come out. One was Saudi Arabia and Iran to have joint naval exercises. These are two countries, Sunni and Shiite, who have never gotten along. but are putting their differences aside in the name of a greater good. My enemy's enemy is my friend. Maybe, I don't even remember why we're fighting anymore kind of thing. Let's just get along. Maybe that's oversimplifying it, but it's a massive deal. And when you see, China was the adult in the room a year and a half ago that brokered this peace deal, went as far as to saying we'll have embassies in each other's countries. So they are moving in a cooperative manner, realizing that together their union, instead of being divided, is much stronger if you're trying to make a united, and it's not even a united front because they're really not united, but they're united in a common cause, and that is more of a multipolar world that is not dominant upon or dominated by the U.S. dollar and the United States rules. And then we see yesterday Xi Jinping and Modi met on the sidelines, made a big deal about it in unifying the border, unifying the countries, putting their differences aside. These are big deals because when you talk to people who push back, Andrew, they always say, well, these countries hate each other. And they usually point to Iran and Saudi Arabia and to China and India. They made a big deal of saying, look, they met on the sidelines in Johannesburg last year, Modi and Xi Jinping did, and made great strides. And now they're doing it again, making a real big point of announcing that this is what they're doing and trying to unite and be much stronger and together and cohesive and cooperative rather than at each other's throats. The other thing that, we've seen a lot of talk of Project M-Bridge and the unit settlement currency, and that's going to be for the state and the commercial banks and the state-run banks. But they made a big deal of coming out with something called BRICS Pay, which is for the people, the transactions. And it's, as Vince Lancy says, and I agree appropriately, it's like a monetary passport. You can go through these countries with one app on your phone or a credit card that allows you to seamlessly purchase without having to convert first to other currencies and whatnot. So they're covering their bases. And if I respect anything about the way that they do things and the reason so few people in this country embrace what's happening and call it a nothing burger, is simply because they do it in a very methodical fashion. Now, I would agree it's speeding up, but people in the United States seem to think they need instant gratification, which isn't fast enough. And so as a result, these things are not moving fast enough. But yet you take a step back. When I started talking about this stuff 2.5, 3 years ago, and 4,000 YouTube videos I've done on the subject, people thought I was out of my mind.
Yeah.
And yet it is accelerating for sure.
There's a lot there, and you're absolutely correct. It's funny because Reuters, I think it was just today, like they had a quote from Jim O'Neill, who the person who originated and created the idea of BRICS at Goldman Sachs. Here's his exact quote. The idea that BRICS can be some genuine global economic club, it's obviously a bit out there with the fairies in the same way that the G7 can be. And it's very disturbing that they see themselves as some kind of alternative global thing because it's obviously not feasible. So and he goes on a little bit more. And it's like you said, it's the argument that they don't get along. And I would say, well, that's fine. If I'm India and I don't get along with China, the best thing I would do is at least be open to the idea of another pay situation for my people, to give them the choice to go whatever option you want. But that also gives them leverage with the U.S., especially one can argue that before even talking about the BRICS, the real problem, like you said, is at home. If there was a strong West, if there's a strong U.S., a lot of this, I don't know, would be stymied pretty quickly.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest point. And I kind of try and make a big point of that in everything I talk about. The culture of this country is being whitewashed, and you have to almost wonder, is it too stupid to be stupid? There are schools of thought out there like the Cloward-Piven theory, which was taught at Columbia University between a husband and wife professor, where the whole theory is more or less turning the United States capitalistic society into a socialist society. When you realize that Jared Bernstein went there just shortly after this, they were there, and so did Obama, Bill Barr, Madeleine Albright, Eric Holder, Anthony Blinken. All of these people in government went to Columbia. I'm not saying that they're following the Cloward-Piven theory, but if you read it, it takes 10 minutes to read the theory. They talk about overwhelming the inner cities. They talk about a massive drive onto the welfare program, overloading it, which leads to basic universal income. Overwhelming the system with mass immigration, creating a serfdom of people who will never vote for the Republican Party, and using the left-leaning media to lean on the sympathy of the fact that the welfare system is unjust and unfair. I mean, it's crazy. If you read it, you'll be like, my God, that is what they're doing. And when people talk about the American spirit, it's still alive, but it was much stronger when we were all united, when we were all American instead of divided. I'm the guy that, when we go to Thanksgiving dinner, my wife looks me in the eye and she says, not a damn word, not a damn word until at least until dessert, because I would like to stay for dinner, because we're defined by who we voted for in the last election. And there is such divisiveness. And when you look at, the lawlessness and the lack of safety and social services in the inner city, when you look at the immigration issue, 25 million people in the country illegally, when you look at the integrity of things like the Justice Department, the FBI, the judicial system in itself, is it two-tiered? The electoral system, is it fair? And whether people watching this believe any of those things to be true or not, a good portion of the world does or wonders. And that lack of integrity, that lack of trust, as Vladimir Putin said not too long ago in St. Petersburg, a few months ago, he said, look, the Bretton Woods system is dead, which it is. And the dollar is based upon trust. Now, if you want to throw in there the full faith and credit, well, you talk about credit, we're 123% debt to GDP, which doesn't even include almost 200 trillion in unfunded liabilities, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, government military pension. And there's never been a country over 130 that didn't outright default or hyperinflate. Never comes back from that. So we're broke, we're insolvent. If you Google what the largest asset is, the United States government, they say they have an asset base of just over 5 trillion. That's not the country, but the government, of which 1.6 trillion, roughly 40+%, is student debt. So we are a country that its largest asset is student debt. We're broke, we're insolvent. We go around the world imposing our way and sanctioning. And you look at what we did with Russia, whether you believe it's just or not. We took $5 billion worth of their treasuries and gave it to the country they're in the midst of a war against, and largely in the form of weapons purchased from the Western military industrial complex. And, this is the country where Janet Yellen can say to CNN, look, we're okay with Xi Jinping and Putin being buddies in BRICS, but if Xi gives 1 penny to Putin's war machine, we will sanction their banks and their companies in Beijing itself, never mind the close to 200 billion we've given to the Ukraine with no congressional oversight, and the 5 billion we stole from the Russians, and the Stinger missiles and the F-16s, because we're the world reserve currency. Now, the rest of the world doesn't like that. On top of, as you mentioned, the fact that we're not united, we're divided, the cities are a mess, the elections are questioned, the judicial system is questioned about its two-tiered status, all of these things that made this country great, even all the way down to the nuclear family, which is being disrupted. And these are the things that made this country special. And these are and I'm a patriot, man. I come from nothing, zero. My parents, and I started this company when I was 19 years old with my dad in a room the size of a closet. My dad's middle name is Miles, and his best buddy from high school, who lent us $60,000 to start the company, on a wing and a prayer, and my parents sold their life insurance policies, to keep us afloat. His middle name was Franklin. And so we come from nothing. I am the embodiment of the American dream. I am a patriot. I thank God every day that I was born in this country. And quite frankly, to your point, I don't care how bad we screwed up monetary policy, fiscal irresponsibility, any of the ills that we have done around the world could be remedied and or tackled, I think, with a much more optimistic viewpoint if the country wasn't in such divisiveness, if it wasn't in such disarray from the fundamentals and the cultures that this country was founded upon. I mean, all the way down to religion and family and the things that are being just shocked and cancel culture and censorship, all of this stuff, it's changed the fabric of the country. So this is not lost on the rest of the world. And when you take one step back and you realize that Jared Bernstein, the lead economic advisor to the government, advocates for losing the reserve status, it's a privilege we can no longer afford. It's like, how many of these things are coincidental and how many of these things almost seem to be drawn up to create some sort of an end game or an outcome? I'll leave that up to you.
I mean, it's all the narrative from, people, whether it's entertainers, performers, movie stars saying, oh, it's our turn not to be in charge. Someone else should be in charge. You hear this kind of narrative all the time. It's kind of part of that same message that we need to be meekly fall back into the night and just kind of fade away. That message has been going on for a very long time, where I used to laugh at it. But that was more of an insidious undertone in media for quite some time. Now we live in a scenario where someone points to a couch and says, that's a table. Oh, okay, that's a table. I mean, it sounds ridiculous.
Well, and to your point, I never had a problem knowing what a couch and a table were, or what a boy and a girl were. If you would indulge me for one moment, and I wanted to thank Forbidden Planet for the comment. I don't flip-flop. I've never flip-flop. In fact, I'm redundant to a fault. But as far as having a hard-on for silver and gold, I will simply say this. I want everyone to understand something, that when I started this company, I was 19. And my dad, who, again, we had nothing. It was a wing and a prayer. And he says, you will buy something every 2 weeks. I don't care what it is, gold or silver. That's the only rule. And so I own the company, and he's not fire me anymore, but I have honored my promise to him, Andrew, for 35 years this February. I have never, ever, ever missed a 2-week period without buying gold or silver. So when I look at gold and silver, it's not an investment, it's wealth. Yeah. And the gift that my father gave me to teach me the power of compounding and of paying myself first is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. It's the best gift I've ever gotten. The power of compounding and the power of an asset that is not being debased every single year, year over year, to me is extraordinary. And I want people to understand, when you talk about saving money, inflation is an increase in the money supply, period, right? You inflate the money supply. Rising prices are a symptom of it. I did an interview 2 weeks ago. I'm the U.S. contact for Glint. It's a MasterCard connected to gold held in a vault in Brinks, Switzerland. Amazing technology behind it, great ownership, and I was honored to work with them. Jason Cousins and I, he's the owner, we do a podcast called The Resilient Compass each week, and we're talking to a UK banker. I don't remember his name, but he was very interesting. And he said, Andy, money supply in the United States has averaged roughly 7% per year for the last decade. And I think that's a little conservative, but okay. And I'm saying this to help understand the way that I look at gold. I mean, in the way that I've accumulated it, it's not an investment to me. It's wealth, period. You own enough, you'll be wealthy. It is an investment, I guess, but I don't look at it that way. So, but anyways, the point I'm trying to make is that I want you to understand really how I look at gold and silver. And silver, it has greater potential, but I'm using gold in this example. So, okay, so the money supply has increased by 7% per year. So inflation, the Cantillon effect says the people up at the top benefit disproportionately, because that money creation ends up in the big money, like the hedge funds and the wealthy, who can buy it and immediately put it into assets, which that inflation pushes up the assets. But those people want to buy stuff at some point with their appreciation. And when they sell and that money trickles down to the people of lower social means or financial means, they benefit disproportionately in the form of higher inflation in prices. But the assets go up so much that the people at the top don't care. Well, anyways, the point I'm getting at is that at 7% inflation, you take 7 into 72. 72 is the law of 70 seconds. You take the interest rate and divide that into 72. It tells you how long before your principal doubles. So if money creation is at 10 or 7% in 10.2 years, the value of the currency is cut in half. So 10 years ago, the price of gold was $1,200 and the dollar was worth twice what it is today. So the dollar has lost half of its value, and gold is what? Just above a double. It's at 27 and change. So did gold go up 120%, or did the dollar lose over half of its value? And I think that's the important thing to understand to me when I talk about owning gold and silver. It is not to become wealthy. It is wealth. And when you realize that inflation is not going away, the Federal Reserve just waved the white flag. They didn't signal, they didn't show us a defeat of inflation. They're 65% away from their target rate, and then they pivot and lower rates. Inflation ain't going away, and it's just getting started. So this is why I think holding your assets in dollars. And I want to talk about what happened on Friday, if you would, at the Bank of Lindsay, because now holding your money in the bank, you got to be out of your damn mind.
Listen, let me jump before. Tell us a little bit about that before I jump into this next thing.
And I'm so sorry. I don't mean to monopolize, man.
Listen, this is the Andy show. This is why we have you on here. You
can tell me to shut up anytime.
No.
Sometimes I never shut up, and my wife gives me so much shit about that. So, No,
and this is what this comment is so great. It says, Andy reminds me of Trump because he's relentless. It's true. People resonate with the story because it wasn't easy. People go, oh, you're very successful now, so it's easy to say. No. You built this over 35 years. There's nothing easy about that. And anybody who knows the precious metals market, that isn't a glamour zone of AI and tech, and it's a tough slog for a lot of it.
And it's true, and we've always been okay. We've always done well, but not, my life changed when I started doing YouTubes in 2020.
Yeah.
But most of my career, gold was in a bear market. So it wasn't easy. I assure you, especially before the internet, it wasn't easy. It's never been easy. So anyways, on top of all of this, we got the issues with the banks, right? And did you see what happened on Friday in Oklahoma?
No.
Okay. So this is, and you're well read, right?
Yeah.
And this is what I want people to think about. This is a guy that's very well read. This is a guy that does a podcast, so he has to be well read. And what's happening right now should scare the shit out of everybody. Let me just put it to you that way. So let me go back a little bit, because again, going into the too stupid to be stupid category, are they trying to do this? Are they trying to consolidate the banks? Are they trying to blow up the system? I mean, modern monetary theory is one central bank issues money. You don't need 5,000 banks. Powell told us there would be consolidations. But the fact that what I'm about to talk to you about is not everywhere, on every news station, on every newspaper, on and on and on CNN, on Fox, on Bloomberg, and blaring, is an indictment to the system and validation is it too stupid to be stupid. All right. So I'm kind of setting it up as a big deal. It is a big deal. Yep. All right. 2008, the banks collapse. Taxpayer bails them out. Dodd-Frank Act comes and says that ain't going to happen again. You will be bailed in. In other words, you are an unsecured general creditor of the bank. When you deposit money, you aren't depositing anything. You're in essence giving the bank an unsecured loan. All right. So bail-ins, another thing that fewer people know about, which I think is maybe even a bigger deal, is if you look right now, there's about $7 trillion in the money markets. Everyone has left the banks chasing yield. Why get paid virtually nothing in a bank? And why buy a one-year CD paying the same thing as a money market rate when you can have daily liquidity of the money market, right?
Yeah.
So half of the money market fund money or more is institutional, like hedge pension funds and insurance companies and all that kind of stuff. So it's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And when Lehman Brothers failed in 08, they held a lot of the money market funds. And everyone tried to pull their money out of the money markets. That's called breaking the buck, where it turns upside down and the money you put in, you don't even get that back. And when you realize the amount of industrial money, institutional money, rather, excuse me, like the pensions and the insurance companies, you'll blow up the system systemically. And so inside the Dodd-Frank Act, two things that people should be aware of, and you can Google this and read it. One is money market gating. The shit hits the fan again, and you think you're safe, and you know, no problem in the money market funds. You're not. You'll be gated. You can't get out. And I did an interview with Dunnigan Kaiser last night, and he talked about having money in '08 in TD fund, and it's a special money market fund, a prime money market fund, and you know that everyone get a great rate of return. It's safe. He's never gotten all of his money back since '08. He was gated, and he's gotten a little bit back here, 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 and here, and he's still about 20% away from getting all of his money back from TD Bank. You can go watch it. It was last night with Liberty and Finance. It was a live stream, and he's one of the most honest guys I know. But they impose money market gating. All right, so you put your money in the money market, things start to break, you will ride it down with everybody else. You cannot get out, and there is record money in there. It's almost like they're trying to pen everybody in and let this happen. All right, so now let me get to what happened on Friday, and because I believe what happened on Friday was the first bank bail-in, and yet nobody knows about it. And it's almost like they're just throwing the test case out there, the trial balloon. Hey, we told you. I want you to also understand that this bank only had roughly 7 million in uninsured deposits. But before I do that, it's ironic it happened in Oklahoma, because when Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank failed, they were bailed out illegally. Now, maybe it's because Oprah Winfrey and all the tech startups and all this big Hollywood money were in these banks with hundreds of millions in uninsured deposits. There was an inquiry by the House of Representatives, and the senator from Oklahoma said to Janet Yellen, you know, Madam Secretary, you just bailed out Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank, and that's illegal according to the Dodd-Frank Act. What am I missing? Janet Yellen says, you're right, Senator, we did, but it was an uber majority vote between myself, the FDIC, the FOMC, which is the Federal Reserve, and the President of the United States. We deemed that these two banks were systemic enough to where if we didn't bail them out, it would brought down the whole system. Now, it won't be at the burden of the taxpayer. It'll be on FDIC, which is a scam in and of itself. They have 148 billion of assets backing 18 trillion in deposits, about 7 cents on the dollar. So ironically, the senator from Oklahoma says, so does that mean if a bank fails in Oklahoma, my constituents will be made whole? No, sir. It's not the case. In fact, they are unsecured general creditors. They will be bailed in unless it's another uber majority vote. So the banks that have failed subsequently, you'll remember, have been either gobbled up by a bank like JP Morgan, who completely consumes it, or other regional banks. And we haven't had any problems yet. But that brings me to Friday. All right. I'm going to read this so that it sinks in a little bit, and then we'll go any direction you want. I'm going to shut up and take whatever questions you want. All right. Friday. This was last Friday. The First National Bank of Lindsay, Oklahoma, was closed by the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, with the FDIC appointed as receiver. The OCC acted after identifying false and deceptive bank records and other information suggesting fraud that revealed deception of the bank's capital. The OCC also found that the bank was in unsafe or unsound conditions to transact business, and that the bank's assets, keep this in mind, this is one very important point, the bank's assets were less than its obligations to its creditors and others. Okay, remember that. Assets less than its obligations to its creditors and others. The OCC is referring the matter to the United States Department of Justice, which has a wide variety of tools to hold individuals accountable for criminal acts and to focus on victims in all of its matters. Okay, great. Good so far. To protect depositors, the FDIC has entered into a purchase and assumption agreement with the First Bank and Trust Company based in Duncan, Oklahoma, which will assume the insured deposits of the failed bank. Okay, the insured deposits. Remember, they have 7 million in uninsured. The sole office of the First National Bank of Lindsay will reopen as a branch of the First Bank and Trust Company during its normal business hours on Monday, October 21st, 2024. All depositors of the closed bank will automatically become depositors of First Bank and Trust Company, and their insured deposits will continue to be covered by the FDIC. That's $250,000 per account. Customers are not required to change their banking relationship to maintain deposit insurance coverage. Here's where it gets nuts. For the uninsured deposits, the FDIC has announced it will make 50% of those funds available to depositors starting Monday, October 21st, 2024. Here's the rest, with the possibility of increasing that amount as assets from the failed bank are sold. But remember what they said, that the bank's assets were less than its obligations to its creditors and others. So they're saying, well, you might get the other. So you have $1 million in that bank. You just bought a house and you're on contract. Boom, the bank fails. All right, 250 is covered. That leaves 750 uninsured. You're getting 50% of that. And this is only a bank with 7 million in uninsured. Silicon Valley Bank had hundreds of millions.
Yeah.
So, okay, so you of that 750, you get half of it, 375 plus 250 is 6.25. Right? That other 375, say bye to it. You have 4 years to maybe get it back. And I did an interview with David Morgan yesterday. He said, well, I'm pretty well versed on this, Andy. It's my understanding that that other part, if you get it back at all, will be in the form of bank stock of the new bank. So, you want to talk about trigger points. Where do you keep your money anymore? Money markets aren't safe. You get gated. The banks aren't safe. You get bailed in. Stock market is massively overvalued. The bond market is a disaster waiting to happen. And so when you talk about having a hard on for gold and silver, I guess that's fair. But to me, it's wealth. Where else do you put your money? Where do you put your money that is safe anymore, that pays anything? And when you look at gold, it's averaged 9.9% per year for 25 years. It's doubled the performance of the 10-year Treasury, and it's just slightly eked out over the S&P 500 at 9.9% versus 9.6%. That's with dividends reinvested. You put your money in real estate at sky-high valuations and rising interest rates. Good luck on that. Where do you put your money? I suppose some would say cryptocurrency. Okay, fine, but I don't think it's ever been more important to be a contrarian. I don't think it's ever been more important to be unconventional. So with that, take it away, brother. I'm going to shut up.
No. I'm going to get you going again because we're learning a lot, and this is why you're here. Because you're putting in so much time since 2020 to teach people, and that's what this really is. It's letting people know that have no clue, they don't have access, because this isn't talked about enough. I mean, this is kind of basic economic things that should be taught right at school all the way up. And it sounded wild 3, 4, 5 years ago, but it's literally playing out as we move along. And I think for a lot of people, that wake up is painful. It's like, no, this can't be happening. I don't think that I'm not reading it right, or it's just a small bank. I'll never do it at a big scale. But it makes sense too when you think of in the context of everything we've talked about, why every mainstream news article is about like go to the dollar. Like, yeah, just go get money market funds, be safe, have some money, on standby in your savings in near cash. In the East, they would say go buy precious metals. But for some reason in the West, it's no. You don't want to do that. It's not an interest-bearing solution. So you're not going to get that offered by a lot of brokers. They'll go, no, there's no coupon rate on that, so we don't want to do it.
Yeah, well, it's double the performance of the 10-year Treasury,
yes,
and with no counterparty risk. And so I could give you so many examples, Andrew, that are shocking. I mean, and you're right. That's what they say. Look, if you would have go back to 1960 and the average price of a house was $17,000, gold was $39. So Grandma and Grandpa say, should we take that 435 ounces of gold we have? 39 into 17,000 is 435. So should we take that gold that Grandma and Grandpa left us and buy this house and have no debt, or should we put it under the mattress for Andrew when he's born? And it won't earn any interest. So there it is under the mattress. They decide to take out the mortgage and put the gold under the mattress, earning nothing but dust for you. And you're talking 64 years ago. It's earned nothing, no interest. Now here we are, 64 years later. The average price of a house is roughly $400,000. So you take 160 ounces or so, 170 ounces buys you that house, and the 435 has been under the mattress, earning nothing. So that 435 buys you almost 3 houses, earning nothing but dust. That's the point. Is that's a faulty metric in an environment where, you know, just about anything interest bearing is a negative real yield. The treasuries are lying because inflation is, you know, what did I say? Inflation was running 7%. How much is gold average per year? 9.9. So and in that example where it has, you know, the price of the dollar has lost half and gold has just over doubled, it retains its purchasing power. You go back to 1933, a $20 gold piece is an ounce of gold. That $20 gold piece bought you a suit, a tie, shoes, an overcoat, everything. That $20 now barely buys you shoelaces or a tie, but the ounce of gold that a $20 gold piece is buys you the same thing that it did 100 years ago. It's the same thing. And so, yeah, I think those people learn more and more about less and less till they know everything about nothing. That's say that kind of stuff. It's the same people who say a gold standard could never work.
Yeah.
You know, during the gold standard, we had 180 years of zero inflation and the greatest prosperity the world has ever seen. But the bankers, especially the central bankers who make them, who get rich off of the way the system is, would like us to believe that gold is an archaic relic of the past. But you know what that's betrayed by, Andrew? The fact that the biggest, most well-funded, well-informed traders on the planet, the central banks, are gobbling it up at a rate no one's ever seen before. That's like, yeah, you know, don't worry about it. We'll keep it. It's crap. You don't want it. That stuff over there,
Yeah.
tiny stuff, that's better.
Yeah, it likens to that never do what they say, look at what they do.
Right.
That's the thing. It's the one hand doing this while they're buying over here.
Yeah.
And that's very telltale.
It's misdirection. The book, The Art of War, is taught at almost every major business school in the world on corporate hierarchy. It's taught in law schools on formulating arguments. It's mandatory reading at West Point, at CIA. It's taught to most Japanese business executives. It's, you know, Bill Belichick, the football coach, who, you know, legendary, read it on Game Theory. It's how to beat your opponent without throwing a punch. And I think that's very pervasive. You misdirect in many ways. The way the West is misdirected is through levered futures contracts, through price. Fundamentals be damned in a market where the tail wags the dog, where where naked futures contracts can suppress the price. But that's changing because of the BRICS, because these countries like Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia, they're all now coordinated, sophisticated, and motivated to stand for delivery and wealthy enough to do it. They never did before. No one ever did. So you want to suppress the price in the West? Good. We're gonna drain the COMEX and we're gonna drain the LBMA, and they are. And you know, be careful what you wish for low prices, because one of the options that, you know, has never been exploited until recently over the last couple of years is the delivery option. In London, 8.1% of all the available silver was delivered out in August. And India's bought about 900 million ounces throughout the world in the last 3.5 years. And guess what? It's at all-time highs against the Indian rupee. Think about that. Silver's at all-time highs against the rupee, but it's still 40% off its all-time highs in an overvalued, unjustifiably so, U.S. dollar.
Yes. Let me jump back to one thing, too. We'll put the bank part. I mean, there's lots about banks we can talk about. But you'd mentioned one of the context, or the pre-context for taking over this bank was fraud. There was fraud. We had to investigate. We went, well, okay, that's a small bank. What about, say, TD Bank and their money laundering of $3 billion last week? That's a little bit more, that's concerning.
Yeah, well, they have enough money they have enough money to grease the skids. You know, here's $3 billion. How about JP Morgan pays a $960 million fine to the Justice Department, the biggest fine they had ever issued at that point, for manipulating the market, and yet they're still allowed to be the custodian of the world's largest silver trust, while their head trader, Michael Nowak, is in prison still. So and if you really want to take it a step further, and I think everyone who owns metals should Google Chris Marcus, Arcadia Economics. He's a very smart dude, and his interview with Bart Chilton. Okay. Bart Chilton was the head of the former governor of the CFTC, the commodity police, where he said to Chris in so many words, look, Bear Stearns failed. They held the largest short position in silver. Ben Bernanke and Hank Paulson called Jamie Dimon into the office and said, we need you to take the short position, Jamie. Well, guys, I'll be in violation of position limits, or I would. That's okay, Jamie. Get your house in order. We'll give you 90 days, let's say. And then after that, you know, you take this position. And I don't know what the quid pro quo was, but okay, fine, I'll do that. At the end of the time period, Bart Chilton went into his supervisors, which at that point would have been Bernanke and Paulson, and hey guys, not only are they not in, they're violating our agreement. They haven't shortened their short position. They've in fact increased it, but they're in violation of antitrust law. They need to be prosecuted. Back down, Bart, he was told. It's a political decision. Well, Bart admitted this. He admitted it on Andrew Maguire's show and then on Chris Marcus's show, and he died a week later. Now, I'm not saying that there's a coincidence. You know, it could just be coincidental. I'm not saying there's a link between the two, but he admitted it. Maybe he was just clearing his conscience. I don't know. But he basically said that he was told to back down even though they were doing this. So, you know, there's a very thin line, Andrew, between conspiracy and reality. But it's being exploited right now by these countries who have the ability to stand for delivery.
Well, there's a lot to go into. Chris Marcus is great. I always encourage people. He's a friend of the show. He's brilliant to talk to. And he's so knowledgeable about markets, but he was a trader. Anything about silver. Same, of course, with David Morgan, who you mentioned. But okay, wow. This, as I kind of thought, really, BRICS is important. It's showing that this is a developing problem, but it is that context of what's going on at home. And if I was to even try to take the other side and say, oh, we've had problems before. We had 2008, and even if I admit that we pushed the problem forward, we still look what happened to the teens there. We did great. Everything was wonderful. Leverage works. All these kind of ideas that, or AI is going to be the future. It's going to save us, and the metric will get off that. Will clear up all of the issues that we have with overvalued, with any debt, with any of these types of things, and we'll march happily along. That seems to be part of the message that is put out on CNBC. But that, I mean, it's very, in a market that doesn't love precious metals, and I think you would say the West as a whole doesn't love it as it should. It's having an exceptional run, and it's telling us something very different about inflation, about the debt, about what's happening. I think that's a lot of just comment I've made there. But
I want to address it. I mean, because that's what drives me nuts when people say that crap, because they don't do their homework in the respect that, okay, let's go back to 08. When the forest fire, you live in Vancouver, and one of my favorite places in the world, and Stanley Park. And all the forests on Vancouver Island, and if there was, even though it rains so much, probably never has a forest fire, but let's pretend there were, it would be the worst, saddest thing in the world. Animals would die, the plants and trees would be destroyed, but you'd come back 5 years later and everything would be healthier than ever, right? It's nature's way of cleaning out the underbrush, and as sad as it is, it's part of the ecosystem. 2008. The Federal Reserve's balance sheet when the great financial crisis happened was $800 billion. And, just as short, as recent as a year ago, it was $9 trillion. All of it bought in interest-bearing investments. So buying bonds and mortgage-backed securities to suppress interest rates, which creates distortions in asset prices and also incentivizes people to go into debt and creates an illusion of prosperity. If the Fed had not come in and injected that kind of money into the system, there would have been a forest fire, and all of the inequities would have been cleansed out of the system. And for people to say, well, if you just would have left your money in, yeah, fine. Well, it's kind of like a guy going to treatment, and he's great, but he's been getting shot with heroin every year or every day for 15 years to maintain the facade. We should have let him have his convulsions and sober up and go through the painful part of going clean. And that's the truth. Now, as far as AI is concerned, I think it'll be incredibly destructive for this economy, for the world economy. I mean, think of all the jobs that are obsolete. My son, who now works for me, I wanted him to become a man. When he got out of college, he went to school at the Ross School of Business, and very prestigious business school, one of the best in the country. And I'm like, look, if you're going to go to school here, you don't come work for me. You go do your thing. And he went to Manhattan and became a an accountant. It's funny, they give you 70 grand a year. You're starving living in Manhattan on 70 grand a year because of inflation. Literally, if I didn't help him, he would have starved. He was living in a hovel with two other guys, smaller than my office, and barely getting by. But think about it. What does a company like Price Waterhouse need to give a young kid out of college 70 grand for to analyze the balance sheet of a real estate investment trust when AI can do it like that for free?
Yeah.
What do you need even things like a radiologist for when you can ask the AI to do it? Yeah, you can have one guy validate all of the AI, reports. But my point of it is that I think AI will be much like that kind of technology, very deflationary. And I think that had the Fed not intervened in the markets, Mother Nature would have had her way. And in the end, Mother Nature always has her way. Like if you remember the old cartoons, where you'll be sorry when you mess with Mother Nature. And in the end, Mother Nature will get her pound of flesh. And it's like pushing a beach ball down further and further and further underwater. And if it slips out of your hand, it comes up and hits you in the chin, and you bite your tongue and the whole 9 yards. Well, that's what we have in store for us. The beach ball's coming, just a matter of when, and with what's happening, probably sooner than people would like.
And it's odd that people can't seem to see it. And if they do kind of think, oh yeah, you know what? That does sound like a lot of debt. I mean, we showed a chart yesterday of the Fed, not the Fed, but Fred, showing the rates. I think it was just over 100 at World War II GDP, debt to GDP, and yeah, we hit over 130 at one point. But like you said, we're around 128 or 125, somewhere around there. I mean, that's shockingly high, and maybe it's just people are kind of getting lackadaisical. I don't know, but even if you say, but look at this BRICS thing. And even if you don't believe the BRICS thing and you're like Jim O'Neill, say all these countries don't like each other, they're still meeting. They still have developed products. They're creating alternatives, and they're not being stymied by doing it. And I'll throw in one other thing because I find it somewhat humorous and interesting when we hear a lot of dispute about, there's going to be tariffs, which means it's going to be inflationary if Trump wins. But at the same time, we've got the tariffs on electric cars, which is one thing. But we also have, as of today, the U.S. coming out saying we're going to want to put a stop to palladium, titanium, and nickel from Russia. So because you guys met in BRICS, because Putin's out there and he's saying all these things, we're now going to want to stop that. That's pretty inflationary as well.
Well, and I mean, palladium and platinum. Almost all of it's mined in South Africa and Russia. So, it's cutting off your nose to spite your face. Yeah. You saw what happened in the nickel market with the shortage in the United Kingdom on the London Metals Exchange a year ago. And these are all, strategic metals. It's stupidity. And when you talk about Trump imposing 20% tariffs across the board, I like that better than, pointing to one country and saying, I'm going to put it on you, but at least it's all of them. But it's that type of business model, this punitive model, that is making the countries more apt to join together in the BRICS. It's almost like crystallizing their resolve. So neither president is addressing the situation, really. The reason I want Trump over Harris, the real reason is because the socialist drive that we're doing is destroying the country in many ways. Look, you could just be pragmatic and say the borders are, they've let 25 million people in the country. If 1% of those people are pissed off at the United States, that's 250,000 angry people. If 5%, it's 1 million. That's a standing army.
Yeah.
And, you can say what you want. You see the stupidity of the ABC news anchor talking to Vance. Everyone's making such a big deal about these apartment. It's only 3 apartment buildings that have been taken over by Venezuelan gangs. Yeah. He's like, do you hear what the hell you're saying? There's only 3 apartment buildings in the United States that have been taken over. This type of ideology needs to end. And we need to go back to the ideals. Heaven forbid that we actually do things like, respect authority and yes, sir, yes, ma'am, hold the door, say a pledge of allegiance, take the wokeness out of the schools and where you're identified and respected by your merit, how hard you worked and what you have achieved. It's equal opportunity rather than equality. And, I am an example of that. I come from nothing. I wasn't a good student. I was a good athlete. And I was going to play college baseball. I hurt my knee. But I took advantage of an opportunity. I mean, I didn't even graduate college, and yet here I am because I've worked very hard. I had equal opportunity. No one gave me anything but an opportunity. And I think those are the ideals that incentivize ingenuity and entrepreneurship and hard work. I outwork people. I'm not Peter Schiff. I'm not smart like that. I just outwork people.
Yeah.
And I try to be sincere, but that's what this country was founded on, Andrew. I'll get off my soapbox, but these are the really important things that I don't think are lost on the rest of the world. The rest of the world is not as inspired to emulate the United States as they once were.
And that culture of that belief system that you've just mentioned is actually attacked openly often, which is still in my mind, it's baffling because the narrative is they're like, no. There should be equality of outcome, and for me, it's I can see how it's moved so fast, at how that implementation of the system to encourage through schooling to post this narrative, but it is still odd to think like that's what made, in particular, the U.S. but the West was this pioneer spirit. Listen, if you outwork and you really go after it, there's no guarantee in life, but chances are something's going to work out because you've got that oomph, you've got that fire. That is not the message that's told to people anymore. It's sad, and that's
being vilified. Worse yet,
Yes. You shouldn't be that person, and not only that, maybe the best person shouldn't win. Like,
because we have to have an equal number of minorities or whatnot. And look, I am all for, treating everyone the same in terms of the way I interact with people, but in terms of, your achievements, reflecting, your place in life. Well, that's all an effort, a function of hard work. My father's best friend was a black kid who grew up in Watts, and ended up, running a division of 3M. And retiring an incredibly wealthy man. And he'd be the first one to tell you that equality is a bunch of nonsense. It's about equal opportunity. He outworked everyone. Didn't matter where he came from. Didn't matter that he came from the hood. He had the opportunity to outwork and outstudy and out effort people. And he ended up retiring a multimillionaire. So, I think that's the ideal that this country was founded on. And again, it's not like it's being vilified in a respect that, Kamala Harris says, the people need to pay their fair share. And if I win, I'm going to double the corporate tax rate. I'm going to double the capital gains rate, and I'm going to impose a 25% unrealized tax on the wealthy. Well, get the wealthy. Well, a guy like John Paulson says, great, I'll pull $9 billion out of the market the minute she wins, and I'll put it into gold and cash because this is un-American. This is uncapitalistic. And you look at these are the people that create the jobs. These are the people that have the most to lose in that environment. What happens to the markets? It'll blow up the entire system. And she's also sticking a knife right in the back of the small business owner. Yeah. And so these are things and saying that she'll give to like 2 million African Americans a $20,000 loan that is forgivable. In other words, you don't need to pay it back to start a business. Well, what if Trump said he'd give it that same thing to white people? It's the whole thing. It's just so nuts. No, it shouldn't be that way. It's illegal. Everyone should have the same opportunity. Because the government doesn't have money. The government has to take money from the private sector through taxation and give it to these people. It should be equality in the way that the government applies law, but equal opportunity in terms of the way that we are valued. And that's what's missing. It's all backwards.
It is all backwards. And I mean, like I said, and not to go into the hopium side, but if anything, over the last 3 to 4 years, it's there's been a solid rebuttal, and we see it in Canada, we see it in the U.S., and we see it in Europe, of people kind of, and this is the part that people on the left will get annoyed about, and they'll say, "Oh, these terrible people," but it's a waking up of like, listen, there's core values which got us here, and and it starts from that nuclear family. Once you start attacking that, which is open, they openly attack the family. That should be alarm bells. And any friend of mine who came from a communist country, whether in European or Eastern European, they see that right away. They're like, I know what that is. I've seen that before. I know exactly what they're doing. But for someone, especially in Canada, where we've been a bit lazy here, we've had it good. We haven't had a lot of problems. And quite frankly, a lot of Canadians believe that their rights come from government. They don't believe that they're inalienable, that there's anything else. They think, oh, no, I do things because the government tells me I can do things. That's kind of where I see this form of leftism in the US coming from, is if we can get people on board like they are in Canada, where they just accept that the government tells you what you can and can't do. And also this constitution thing is a bit of a problem, which is an open conversation. That's shocking. But the hopium part I see is so many people are now waking up and going, these aren't BS stories. It's not misinformation. It's right out there. If I just scratch the surface a little bit, do a little bit of work, I can go find all this out. No problem.
Yeah.
And once again, the solution isn't easy, no matter what, regardless of outcomes in the next couple of weeks, month. So I kind of put that in the context of, oh, well, we're going to have a savior come in, save the day. The economy is going to be perfect. Everything's going to be okay. I'll just have to wait it out for a little bit. It's like, no. There's so much work that has to be done to dig out of the hole that we're already in. That means that precious metals have a long way to go still. So if someone says it's too late, like it's already, it's already up at highs, it's too late for me. Maybe take that.
The money supply has increased 14-fold since 1980, and silver is selling at a 40% discount to that all-time high. All of the asset prices, including the stock market and the bond market and the real estate market, well, those prices are all too high. Those were the ones that were allowed to inflate through suppression on the LBMA and the COMEX. Precious metals have never been allowed to find fair value. If you look at the COMEX, they have a short position of about between 750 and 800 million ounces, and which is a year's worth of global mine supply. And it's concentrated into 8 commercial banks. 8 banks hold the largest short position in any commodity ever traded in the history of the COMEX market. Am I able to share my screen with you by chance?
Yes. Adam, can you allow Andy to share? I should just take 1 second. While we're doing that, it just reminds me of an article I saw. Was it the Jerusalem Post? Silver prices surge, banks face billion-dollar losses. 5 major U.S. banks face billions from massive short selling. I just want to fill up the time there before you start to share. Here, let me just see if I can do it here.
I think I can do it. Let's see.
Give it a shot to see if you can. I think you can. Just go ahead and share.
Okay. Oh, no, I have to. It's not going to work on this stupid thing. Darn it.
Is there an article that you want us to look up?
No, it's let me just see if I can do it here. I don't know if I can. If I were on Google Chrome, I'd be able to do it, but I don't know why it doesn't let me do it on Microsoft Edge. It says I should be able to do it. Well, anyways, I'm sorry, I can't.
No.
But so in essence, what you have is 8 commercial banks that are holding on COMEX the largest concentrated short position in any commodity ever traded. Interestingly enough, number 2 is platinum, number 3 is gold, number 4 is palladium. But 8 banks are holding this massive short position, and on the LBMA, the position is between 4 and 6 billion ounces short. That's COMEX, what you read. And they're saying in that letter 750 or so million ounces. I thought it was closer to 800 million, but that article is right. And it is presenting an existential threat, but those same banks are short on LBMA between 4 and 6 billion. The LBMA trades 292 million ounces of silver per day. And that's what they tell us. And there's 800 million ounces on the exchange in London, of which 500 million belong to the ETF. So that leaves 300 million available. Now remember, 8% of that, roughly 26 million ounces, was delivered in August. But of that 292 million ounces they trade a day, they admit to it being 10 times understated because they only post the final numbers. So they're trading all over the place all day long, here and here and here and here, but they only post the final numbers, which would mean they're trading upwards ends of 2.9 billion ounces of silver per day. That's 3.5 times annual global mine supply, off of a 200 or a 300 million ounce stack, 10 times that. And they're doing it almost all paper, 90%. Yep. So they're distorting the price of gold and silver. Now that you have all of these banks standing for delivery, challenging the West, to that article's point, an existential threat to these banks, I think at some point these banks say, screw y'all, I'm out. I'm covering. I'm not going down the hole with you. It's every man for himself. Bye. And yep. The first bank that does that gets out unscathed, or relatively. The other ones, the price goes bang. And as the price goes up amidst all that covering, it will have a religious experience effect on a lot of these banks. So when people say this, understand that there's been a vested interest in the West to control the price of gold and silver. In terms of silver, it's different than gold in my mind. In gold, it's loosely because of a term called Gibson's paradox, which is the inverse relationship between real interest rates and gold. They had low interest rates forever, so they had these massive short positions to kill the canary in the gold mine, alerting them to the suppressed interest rates. You're supposed to have high price in gold as there's no opportunity cost, so they kill that. And that was a game to make the bond market seem stronger than it was, and to support the illusion of Western supremacy. But the silver, if your listeners, and I think John Little from the Pickaxe has done an amazing job. I talk a lot about Senate subcommittee hearing S.2768 in October 1942, where it says more or less that we need 200 million ounces of silver per year in military consumption for silver. And if you look at the supply demand numbers right now, this was in 42, they're openly admitting 200 million and increasing from 100 million. And I've given speeches at Jay Martin's conference in your backyard there at the VRIC 2 years in a row, talking about, that there's 500 ounces in a Tomahawk missile and any sophisticated missile like it. And yep. 2 years in a row, a man from the Department of Defense has met me right after my speech and said, I'll be damned, you're right. This year, he said it. Last year, he said, I think you're right. He showed me all sorts of pictures. He said, I designed the damn thing. And this is all declassified, he says. And he says, you're right. There's between 13 and 14 kilograms in all of these missiles in the cone. But if you look at the supply demand numbers that are coming out of the Silver Institute, their numbers are very interesting. They do not speak at all. They say the demand, and there's 260 million ounce shortfall this year, over a billion over the last 6. It says the demand comes from industrial 9%, electrical and electronics 9%, photovoltaics 20%, brazing, alloy, and solders 3%, other industrial 9%, jewelry 7%, and silverware 4% or whatever. And so where's military? Yeah. So it's the military industrial complex's desire to hold the price of silver down to make high-tech weapons. How else do you explain 8 commercial banks as stupid as a mud wall holding this massive naked short position, growing? Yes. Why would they do it? Because they're being told, just like Chris Marcus's interview with Bart Chilton, they are being told from people far higher up the food chain than Biden, and that's military industrial complex, step on the price of silver. We need it to make weapons. They took it out of the supply demand numbers when they used to talk about it. There is a deficit, and yet the Western banks are suppressing it when all of the other countries are buying it. You would think that's not real bright. Yeah. This is why. How do you make weapons without silver? You don't. And they pull the strings.
That's very interesting context as well. It also would kind of add a little bit more interest with just the other day with Russia announcing that they were going to include silver now, that they're
first government I've
actively
ever seen do that.
Yeah, the first, you're like, whoa, interesting. That's strange.
And they also, by the way, said platinum and palladium,
yes,
which is an important fact. As we say, we're going to stop taking it from them. Oh boy, like that's a threat.
Yeah.
We don't have access to it, and they're the ones who are producing it and now consuming it and understand exactly what it represents. I think I have a number here real quick about that. So yeah, Russia is also in this month, they're increasing their daily acquisition from 1.12 billion rubles to 8.21 billion rubles worth of gold, silver, platinum, palladium every day right now for the next month. And so, these countries understand this is a system now, as Zoltan Pozsar puts it, Bretton Woods 3, it's all about commodities. And, who wants debt instruments from a country that's chosen inflation over austerity? And if they piss you off, they'll take it. The weapon is, there's no incentive to own it anymore. And so they're replacing it with commodities, which are doubling the performance without the counterparty risk. And in the end, are more important than the paper that buys it.
Well, here's interesting. Let's go full bore. Because one could argue that the West has been kind of at war for years now already. It's just been in a different kind of way. And you could throw in the open borders. You could throw in this situation. You could certainly throw in, a lot of social media. Like I can go in and promote any person's video, like the most bizarre, crazy thing. They would have no idea that I just put $10,000 to do it. It looks like they just went viral. Boom. That money can flow in there. No problem. And I kind of make the argument that, well, sometimes we see these videos and it looks like, wow, that's got a lot of traction. People are really into that. You can do that without anyone even knowing. And that makes a very handy weapon for social engineering or disengineering or discourse, is that you kind of look at these banks being told you're fighting a battle right now with, say, the BRICS nations. I think they have about 20% of reserves now, somewhere around there. They would know full well how critical a lot of these metals are, say silver specifically. Never mind, we started off talking about rare earths. Your missile guidance systems don't get anything unless you've got those special little kernels, little bits amount of rare earths in them. You don't get to have your guidance systems, and those are produced and controlled in China. What do you think of that overall narrative? That it all, if you kind of take a step back, you go, oh, that kind of seems like what's happening here. It's escalating. Someone would say very rapidly, but also if we look back, maybe not that it's been escalating kind of consistently.
Yeah, it has in every way. That's my favorite term, logarithmic decay, little by little by little, and then all at once. So it is. Everything is escalating, whether it be prices or rhetoric or severity or these things are all coming to a boiling point. And I think it's only going to get worse as people wake up to what's happening. For the first time, I think you may see that happen, whether it be with the banks, the insurance companies. Ultimately, this is when you realize that our lead economic advisor is trying to lose the reserve status. We've weaponized the dollar. We're printing it to oblivion, into oblivion. We've opened up the borders. We've destabilized the country. We have divisiveness. And you talk about the banks and all of these things. A year ago when Silicon Valley Bank failed and all these banks were dying because of the liquidity that had dried up, government came in and issued the BTFP, the Bank Term Funding Program. And guess what day it's set to expire when all of the money will be pulled out of the system? That'd be November 6th, the day after the election. And if you go back and look at a chart of what that will look like, it's almost the same thing in terms of liquidity in the system as we saw right before the repo market crisis in 2019, right before the market collapse in 2020. And then again, when they had to reliquify the banks through this this plan. It's almost as if they could pull the rug on the entire banking system right at a time half the country is furious that they think the election was stolen, and create a, pardon my French, but a real shitstorm.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, there's a fine line between conspiracy and reality. But to Kathy's question, should you take not all your money out of the bank? No, but yes, it is at all-time highs against the rupee and the Australian dollar, and it's inches away from being at all-time highs in the Canadian dollar and the euro. People don't notice that because it's always valued in dollars. But I think having any more money in the account than it is guaranteed by the government, which is laughable, but any more than that, you're foolish. Dude, these are interesting times, man. And
Yes.
as the Chinese curse says, may you live in interesting times, and
Yeah.
I would rather know what's coming and have the ability to get out of the way of it than be blindsided. And the thing is, there are a lot of people out there that are very well read, maybe even more well read than us, Andrew, but just reading the wrong stuff. And
Yes.
therefore they have no idea what's coming, and they're going to get run over by it. So I think it's time to be a contrarian, or you'll be a victim, as Rick Rule says. And to have all your money in dollars, you're destined to go broke when this thing breaks. And, just imagine that you were one of these poor people in rural Oklahoma and now just lost 50% of, 40% of everything you have, and you may get it back. Maybe not, probably not, most likely not.
No.
You got 4 years to figure that out. But imagine that happens to a big bank like a TD Bank. Now, obviously, that's a Canadian bank, so not a good example. But maybe here in the United States, let's say it happens to a U.S. bank like U.S. Bank, which is the name of it, which is not a commercial bank, but a very large regional bank based in Minneapolis, and huge. I mean, the Minnesota Vikings stadium is U.S. Bank Stadium, and a big bank, but they have massive amount of uninsured deposits. You want to blow up the system, let one of these big banks bail in or money market gate. Yep. And you have a run on the banks that no one's ever seen before, which would crush all of the banks. And now they come in and issue their CBDC. That'll never happen again, they'll tell you, because that can't happen with the Federal Reserve. So just sign on the dotted line, take the CBDC, and we'll make you whole since your bank blew up. And anyone else out there that wants to do it and not run into this problem, sign up to the CBDC. And that's not conspiracy. Lael Brainerd, the number 2 at the White House behind knucklehead Jared Bernstein. And if many of you may have seen Jared Bernstein on Twitter trying to explain bond sales and money creation, it's the most humiliating thing I've ever seen from an official. But he's number 1. The number 2 is Lael Brainerd. She left the Treasury to work at the Fed underneath Powell. She was vice chair under Powell. And when Biden fast-tracked the development of the CBDC through executive order, she developed it with MIT while at the Boston Fed. And she also ran point for something called Fed Now, which is being piloted right now. That's like Venmo and Zelle on steroids, backed by the Fed. She is a modern monetary theorist. So, how unreasonable is it to pen everyone into money markets and destabilize the banks even further? And you think about it, they lowered rates by 50 basis points. What happened to the 10-year? Went up by 50 basis points, commensurate. And those are what the banks are. And so it's further destabilizing the bank's balance sheets. You see a problem like that wakes everyone up. No one knows what's coming. And when that comes, most people don't even know what a bail-in is. No. So when that happens, man, I think it's a very interesting experience, to say the least.
No, and I'm gonna let you go, because I would keep you for a couple more hours if I could, but I know you because we've got lots of things we could talk about, but I know you've got a day ahead of you. But I wanted to mention this because people should be concerned. But the solution and what we've been talking about isn't painful. Like, we're not having to say go out and buy some really hard to understand fancy derivative product that was handmade, bespoke tranche financing for you. It's not painful. It's not hard. You can protect yourself. It's not hard to look up, to read about, to find out about. You can watch, like you said, 20,000 hours of you over the last years, helping to teach people, educate people, and showing the evidence, showing the data. And that is worth a lot. Whenever the solution, because someone will say to me, well, Andrew, what should I do now out of this? And we saw people ask, should I take my money out of my bank? And you answered that. It isn't hard. I mean, there's, go pick up some silver, right? I mean, how hard is that? It's not terribly difficult. So
I think you want to get out of debt best you can, especially variable rate debt.
Yes.
I think you want to pay yourself first. And that's the lesson I learned, 35 years ago from my dad. It's like anything, Andrew. You want to get in shape. You don't go to the gym and work out really hard one day and say, I'm done. You work out every day or 5 days a week. You get regimented. It's the same thing with anything. Saving is the same thing. You become dedicated and regimented, and you pay yourself first every paycheck. It doesn't matter how much, even if it's a $10 bill in a jar. Not a really good way to do it with inflation running the way that it is. But still, the point of it is that if you never do that or take that first step, you never end up getting anywhere. And, much like you, I'm sure you wake up one day and you say, shit, how did I get to be this old? Like, I still feel like I'm in high school in my head, but I'm not. Where'd that go? How'd that happen? And my dad has a great analogy. He's like, life's like a roll of toilet paper. When you're young, you don't notice it spinning, but as you get older, it starts to spin faster and faster. You see the cardboard, it's coming. You don't know exactly when. You can't quite see how many more spins it has, but it's true. I think you have to start somewhere, and you start by paying yourself first. And to whatever degree that you can do that, prepare any way you can.
And I say this, and although it might sound a bit too harsh and cruel, in every major situation, event, like that we're going through, crisis, there's an opportunity in there. So the more, and it's not too late, the more effort you put in right now, like starting today, to get yourself, whether it's in shape, get prepared for what's coming, do a little bit more homework, get interested, say, well, what's one way I can defend myself against this? That's going to be worth a lot because most people won't. And most people don't even know to go look. I mean, the mining / precious metals market is small compared to people who just flip on and look at what's Apple doing today. So there's going to be huge opportunity for those that have the gumption, or that, I would say, even that human spirit, which is always applauded, especially when people talk about America, especially that American exceptionalism, is that spirit of, no, I can get this done. It doesn't matter if I don't have a 140 IQ. I can get this done because there's enough belief. I've got enough effort and enough oomph. Especially with what we're facing right now, you don't need to be a rocket scientist. You don't. You just need to put a little bit of work, have tenacity, be disciplined, and there's a ton of safety for yourself, but also opportunity as we go into things getting more challenging.
You can look at it kind of like the way that I'm out there, and then I'll let you go after this. The first time I ever did public speaking, it was in 2008 at a conference in Orlando, and I went up there with everything in mind, what I was going to say, and my mind went blank like a whiteboard. And I got off the stage. It looked like I'd been in a wet t-shirt contest. I had sweat so much through my shirt, I was drenched. And it was humiliating. But I got back up and I did it again, and I did it again, and I worked and I worked and I worked and I worked. I got on YouTube, and I've done 4,000 videos since 2020, and nothing's ever changed my life the way that this has, ever. And that's the point. It's not about equality. It's busting your ass to make something of yourself. And this is why it always makes me angry when, people say he's talking his book by doing this. No, I'm not. I don't know why doing the right thing and building a good business have to be mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
And those people who say that have never built anything, worked hard to develop something with integrity and honesty. And that's where I come from, brother. It is. And by now I would have been outed, I would think, after all of these videos. Yeah. But yeah, I do care. I mean, kind of a legacy do you want to live? We joke about it a lot, my family. It's like, yeah, when I'm long gone, I say to my kids, your grandkids can see what great grandpa Andy was like on YouTube. You want to be known as a liar, or someone who's full of shit, or someone who tried their best. When we all meet our maker someday, hopefully that he says, you know what, you did a good job trying your best. Go on, you're in. I say that kind of tongue in cheek, but that's how I feel. Like, make your mark on life and do it the right way, and good things happen. So to your point, that's why this equality thing pisses me off more than anything, because no one ever gave me anything. And it's through those ideals that I reached success. I don't know why anyone can't do it. So that's all I got. That's a drop the mic moment.
Well, we love it, Andy, and we love Miles Franklin. Everyone reach out. If you've got questions, you can reach out to me. I can send them on to them as well. Watch all of the videos, the 4,000 videos, because it's a lot of hard work to get here. And it's not just about Andy's been right about most of these things for a long period of time. It's that the honesty and the fact that he's built a book over a long period of time, and people love and respect him because of who he is. And that makes a big difference. And that's how you can build a real business as well. You give people what they want. They're satisfied. They're happy. And we're seeing it, culminate right now.
Not such a novel idea, brother.
Yeah. Like how weird. Yeah. Like it's not, I just have to create some sort of app that I can scale.
Make people actually want to come back. Yeah. That's how you do it. But anyways, look, man, I've enjoyed chatting with you, and, color me interested anytime you want to pick up where we left off. I'd be happy to. And you're a good man. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks for bringing me aboard. And let's chat again real soon. Do you by chance, are you at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference?
I am. Yes.
Well, maybe we can we can pick up where we left off there in January, if not sooner, and maybe have a beer to boot after, and get to know each other a little bit better.
Perfect. That sounds great. We really appreciate your time, Andy, and helping to teach us and educate our side over here and our crew. We really appreciate it.
Pleasure is mine, man. You have a good one. Thanks for having me.
Take care.